Look, Rocco Beck ranked 84th in the country last year in completion percentage, 59% completion percentage. All right, 56th nationally in passer rating. It dropped 12 points last year, despite having those two studs at wide receiver. We talk about Rocco Beck and Avery Johnson as this big gap, right? Avery Johnson's pass efficiency was only 1.5 points lower than Rocco Beck in 2024. Avery ranked 62nd in the country. Beck was 56. Beck's yards per pass attempt last year, 7.7. It ranked 44th in the country after ranking number 23 nationally with 8.5 yards per pass in 2023. And again, I mentioned the drop rates already. So how does he handle not having those two guys out wide? And you look at it as well, though, like the one thing that you got to pay respect to is his ability to throw the ball downfield. Iowa State 26th in the country in passive explosives and had the third best mark in the Big 12 in passing explosiveness last year. Beck completed 53 passes of 20 or more yards in 2024. That tied for the 12th most in the country, while ranking number 3 in the Big 12 behind Josh Hoover of TCU and Colorado Shedeur Sanders. He completed 10 passes of 40 or more yards, ranking number 22 in the country. Avery Johnson also completed 10 passes of 40-plus yards, tying Rocco Beck. Over the past 2 seasons, Beck has a 93 passing grade from PFF on throws of 20-plus yards while making 31 big-time throws at 20 or more yards. Both are top 25 marks in the country per PFF. But again, he's a bit of a gunslinger when it comes to throwing the ball downfield, often takes chances, could result in a turnover. The concern you have here, guys, and again, we know Noel and Higgins aren't there and they're big play guys, but Iowa State's passing game, what will that look like against a K-State secondary that lacks experience? And we know explosives have been a huge problem for Kansas State over the last 2 years. K-State ranked 128th out of 134 FBS teams and last in the Big 12 in passing explosives allowed. And in 2023, it was a huge problem. Again, 59 plays of 20 or more yards in 2024 in rushes and completions combined, 86th in the country, et cetera. Last year was the second worst pass efficiency rating defensively of the Kleiman era. And you had Jacob Parrish, a 3rd-round pick, and Marquis Siegel, a 5th-round pick at safety back there. So what does K-State's secondary look like against a relatively inexperienced and new Iowa State receiving core? But again, they have 2 really good tight ends in Burkle and Brahmer. I think that's going to be the key, guys. I think K-State's ability to cover those 2 tight ends, 6'6", 6'7", good pieces in that offense, they're going to be Beck's security blanket in this game. K-State has to lock in on those guys because I'll be frank, I'm not that scared of Chase Soule. He comes from East Carolina, and I think he's more of a product of the system that he came from. 20 yards per catch last year, but they hired the Ole Miss offensive assistant who came over, and East Carolina led the country in explosive plays of 40-plus yards at 19 through the air. I think he's I think he's probably a fine player, but he's an oar on that depth chart at wide receiver. Xavier Townsend, a UCF transfer, 7.9 yards per catch on 66 receptions in his 3 years of college football, coming from an offensive-friendly scheme of Gus Malzahn at UCF. It doesn't scare me. All right, so the tight ends are where I get nervous.
Well, in fairness with Townsend, he did opt out after 4 games last year, right? So, that hurt the numbers some.
Well, he's got 66 receptions this career. If I'm looking at yards per reception, 7.9, that's a terrible number. So, yeah, I don't know.
I said that the quarterback situation was kind of a dumpster fire at UCF last year. That probably wasn't going to. I know people hate that, but that may have been kind of a sound decision by him to look at that and be like, yeah, this doesn't seem like it's going to be very good. Anyway, yeah, Iowa State's running game does not appear very strong on paper. I know, insert Abu Sama joke here, but he has not been overly productive outside of that game in Manhattan a couple of seasons ago. Carson Hansen's okay. But I think, so this is probably going to come down to what happens with the secondary, because all you'd have to do, thinking about early games last year, not played at home. All you got to do is flip on the tape of Darian Mensah. I'm sure Rocco Beck flipped on the tape of Darian Mensah last year for Tulane and some of those high school wide open receivers there and was like, yo, this looks awesome. So you can't have another one of those performances.
I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. Great analysis. We can't. K-State cannot let receivers run wide ass open on Saturday. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I'll take it a step further. I think the key will be to stop their running game and make sure it is stopped, because if it is, then you can have your pass rushers pin their ears back and maybe help out in the pass defense.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, DY. I mean, I think if you can minimize their running game, which again, they don't strike fear into you with the explosiveness of Carson Hansen, Abu Sama, but Abu Sama, 23% of his career total rushing yards in 2 seasons at Iowa State,
right.
26 games came against K-State, right, in 1 game. And he had 81 yards on 15 carries last year, too. So, like, he's probably got over 30% of his career rushing yards against K-State.
Make them one-dimensional, and that one dimension is a work in progress a little bit.
Yeah. All right, defensive side of the ball, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, we've hit on some of the defensive stuff. Like John Haycock, really good defensive coordinator, 24th defensively in the SP Plus last year. I'll try to go a little bit quicker on this side of the football. Look, they lost corner Darian Porter, taken in the 3rd round of the 2025 NFL Draft. Longtime starting corner Miles Purchase also gone. Bo Freiler, Malik Verdon, 2 stud safeties. They're both gone, but they have Dominique Orange, number 7 defensive tackle in Pro Football Focus national rankings. At D-tackle, Jontez Williams, number 9 corner per PFF, really good player. Caleb Bacon, really good linebacker. To me, John, this and DY, their linebackers are by far and away the strength of their defense. And then they got a couple good players on the back end of that defense. It's a team that doesn't get after you. They don't get after the quarterback at all. If you look at the time there, John Haycock's defense, you mentioned DY, he even came out and said he doesn't really believe sacks matter, right?
Essentially, that was his roundabout answer. Sacks aren't a thing.
Yeah, so at 1.14 sacks per game last year, 130th out of 134 FBS teams, only 16 sacks in the season, 100th nationally with 4.9 tackles for loss per game last year. So they didn't create a lot of negative plays. 111th in sacks per game in 2023 nationally, 1.6, second worst in the Big 12, 114th in 2022 at 1.5 per sacks per game, last in the Big 12. So not a defense that gets after the quarterback, which makes you feel a little bit better. Obviously, when you talk about K-State's offensive line, breaking in new tackles, new bodies up front, this is not a team that creates a ton of pressure and a lot of different looks for your offensive line. Last year was kind of an outlier for Iowa State. They allowed 5.35 yards per carry, ranking 126 out of 134 FBS teams. That was the second worst among Power 4 teams, only ahead of Oklahoma State. 110th nationally, allowing 188 yards per game on the ground. In 2023, guys, 3.8 yards per carry, 40th in the country. Number 7 in the country at 3.2 yards per rush in 2022. And then they were the same in 2021, 3.2 yards per rush that year as well. So last year, more of an outlier. I think that ties in. They had a lot of injuries at linebacker last year, and as a result, they've got most of those guys back. Jeremiah Cooper back at safety. He didn't quite meet the expectations bestowed upon him in 2024 following a 2023 season where he was named first team All Big 12. But he's back. And again, Jontez Williams, one of the better corners in the Big 12 as well. It's a defense that was 13th in the country in pass efficiency defense last year, number 3 in the Big 12. And again, only 166 yards allowed per game through the air, the fewest in the country, 15 interceptions, tied for 22nd in the country. So really solid when it comes to the back end of that defense, but they're replacing 4 out of their top 6 guys back there. So they've got some question marks too. I think they're going to be much improved against the run this year. And unfortunately, K-State couldn't take advantage of their awful run defense last year when they played. K-State had 144 yards on the ground. It was the 3rd fewest the Wildcats ran for last season in a game. And that's certainly disappointing. You got to have at least a respectable enough run game, guys, where you're getting at least 4 yards per carry against the Cyclones to allow you to utilize the play action game a little bit more and be more effective there, because we know Avery Johnson's numbers take a significant leap when they go play action. And I can't wait to see what Matt Wells does with that and what this system looks like with him calling the shots.
By the time they got to that game in Ames at the end of the year, I think DJ Giddens was a little worn down, beaten up, if you want a little bit of optimism to them being able to run the ball more first game of the year. We'll see, but I'm with you. Look, John Heacock's an excellent defensive coordinator. I think they will be much better against the run this year. I'm with you on that.